Nuclear research history. Little note here. When the Fukushima event happened, one of the things I went looking for shortly afterwards, because I knew I had seen them before, was nuclear gardens or atomic gardens. And these were just a few articles that had photos and the science of proximity to radiation effects. Now, the most impressive part of that was the garden pictures itself. Very basically, they had a nuclear high energy source in the middle of the garden, and then they planted plants in a radius around that source. All the plants that were close were dead. All the plants in the intermediate zone were not healthy or very healthy, some very few. Some very few. Most died. Most could not reproduce. And in the outer skirt of that were more normal plants. And then the control plants from the same seed groups were planted elsewhere to see how they would do and thrive. So that was the science, isotope, radiation effects. It was a simple garden. It was your garden in the backyard with a little bit of fallout. This is why your survival ideas might be questionable. Maybe it's better for a good defense than that shitty offense. See, it's not a sport. It's just not sports anymore. So those nuclear garden references, to my mind, I had two links, and a third was to a paper describing, and that those references have kind of disappeared. I have not been able to find them. So I have them stored somewhere that's very hard to get at, and I'm not going to. But the searches for those seem to have gotten hard, or the information's gone away, or more likely what happens are the roots names of the websites change and the links just go dead, and that's what happens. So you can't re-find them, or they're buried inside universities. But that at the time, and still is, the best example of the effects of radiation. Dead plants nearby, struggling plants a little further away, and a little further out is mostly good but an uncertainty, right? So how do you get that mostly good number? How do you understand that? What is that? How many steps away from that source do you have to walk? A Geiger counter could give you hints, but possibly not. So, all right. Atomic gardens, nuclear gardens. If you find one, the photos of the dead plants, they're rather coarse looking because they look like a bullseye and work like a bullseye. You can define the lines of where you're going to be dead, you might be dead or should be dead, and then maybe you can live a little longer. That's the brutality of what that one picture shows you about radiation. So, one of those gardens was in Japan. So there was three that I'm aware of. Anyway, interesting science buried out there somewhere. Very visual. It is how radiation works. It's why the zero harm claim is simply wrong. Pollution. Pollution.